I'm Emily Hart, and I watched my family fracture in real time at my own brother's wedding. While everyone raised their glasses, I overheard the bride whisper words that sent chills down my spine. "I'll have full control over him now." Moments later, I was being publicly humiliated by the person who used to protect me most. And as I ran out of the ballroom, I knew this wasn't just a wedding. It was a war. Before I dive into what really happened that day, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. It started with glitter. Gold sequins, white roses, and fake smiles. My brother Brandon was marrying Kayla Price in a hilltop venue just outside Rhinebeck, New York. The whole thing felt curated for a magazine spread. String lights, linen napkins, a harpist near the terrace. But under all that elegance was something off. I could feel it. I just didn't know what it was yet. I hadn't seen Brandon this polished since his college graduation. His tux was fitted, hair slicked back, eyes distant. When he caught me watching him from the edge of the ballroom, he smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. And Kayla looked like she was already posing for a lifestyle blog. Every movement felt rehearsed. Like she wasn't marrying a man, she was securing a position. Still, I kept my doubts to myself. Brandon was my only sibling. After our mom's cancer scare last winter, I promised myself I'd support him more, even if I didn't fully trust the person he was marrying. Then came the whisper. It was just past the cake cutting. I had gone to the back corridor near the restrooms to freshen up and grabbed a glass of water from the side table. That's when I heard Kayla's voice. Soft, smug, and unmistakably clear. "I'll have full control over him now." There was a pause, and a second voice, her friend maybe, giggled. Kayla continued. "The house, the bank account, even the car. He'll sign whatever I say. He's already halfway there." My stomach flipped. I should have walked away. I should have said nothing. But my body moved before my brain did. I stepped into view, heart pounding in my chest. Kayla froze. Her friend gasped. We locked eyes. "Interesting toast," I said, my voice shaking more than I wanted it to. She didn't flinch. Just gave me that same polished smile I'd seen all day. "Emily, don't you have somewhere to be?" "Yeah, with my brother. He needs to know what you just said." She tilted her head, faux innocent. "Brandon won't like you causing a scene." Before I could respond, she strode back into the ballroom like nothing happened. I followed her. The music had just faded out. Someone was announcing the start of the couple's first dance. But Kayla beat them to it. She clutched Brandon's arm, turned to the crowd, and said sweetly, but loudly enough to cut through the chatter, "Your sister's trying to ruin our moment." Heads turned. Brandon looked between us, confused. "What's going on?" "She's accusing me of something," Kayla said, her voice breaking just enough to sound wounded. "I heard what she said," I snapped. "Emily, not everything is about you." Brandon's voice boomed across the room, silencing everything. The DJ fumbled with the music. Someone gasped. The heat rushed to my face. I stared at him, stunned. He'd never spoken to me like that, not even during our worst fights in high school. Not even when we buried our grandmother last fall and disagreed on how to divide her things. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like I didn't belong in the room. People were staring. Cameras were pointed. I felt the weight of every eye, every judgment. Without a word, I turned and left. My heels echoed across the marble floor. My heart cracked with each step. Outside, the cool air hit my skin like a slap. I didn't cry. Not then. Not until I sat in my car, staring at the venue lights in the distance, and whispered, "She got to him already." Because that's when I knew. Something in my family had changed, and it wasn't coming back. I spent the night in a hotel off Route 9, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything could flip so fast. One sentence. That's all it took to break the bond Brandon and I had built over decades. We used to be a team, the Fort Builders, our parents called us. Backyard architects of tree houses and defense tunnels made from couch cushions. When the neighborhood kids teased me about my glasses in 5th grade, Brandon had shown up on the playground and made them apologize. He once told me, "I'll always be your big brother first, no matter who comes into our lives." But now he was someone's husband first, and I was someone ruining the moment. I replayed his words over and over in my mind. "Emily, not everything is about you." As if I demanded the spotlight. I hadn't even wanted to be noticed. I just wanted to protect him. From her. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove back to Albany and called Marla, my best friend since college, who now lived 2 blocks away. When she opened her door and saw my face, she didn't ask any questions. Just ushered me in, wrapped me in a blanket, and set water to boil. We sat cross-legged on her living room rug, the smell of chamomile and cloves wafting between us. I held the mug like it might shatter if I let go. "I think I lost him," I whispered. Marla blinked slowly, letting the silence sit before speaking. "Tell me what happened." I told her everything. The whisper, the confrontation, the ballroom, the shout. Her expression darkened as I talked, jaw tightening, eyes flicking back and forth like she was assembling the pieces of a puzzle. When I finished, I handed her my phone. "I took this last summer." It was a photo of Brandon and me, grinning in the woods, mud smeared across our arms. We'd gone hiking up in the Adirondacks, just the 2 of us. I remembered that day like it was yesterday, how we'd laughed when our granola bars melted in his backpack and how he'd said, "I hope Kayla never changes this about us." Now I wondered if she had, or if he had let her. Marla sipped her tea. "You know what I think. I think Kayla didn't break anything. I think she rewrote it, made him forget who he was." I nodded slowly, tears slipping down my cheeks. "He used to tell me I was the only one who understood him." "Then Kayla must have made him forget," Marla said gently. "So let's help him remember." Her words settled over me like a promise. We dug through old photo albums that afternoon, ones my parents had given me when they downsized their house last year. Brandon and me in Halloween costumes. Brandon teaching me how to ride a bike. A blurry shot of us playing chess on a rainy Sunday. Moments she couldn't erase, no matter how hard she tried. "He's in there somewhere," I said, tracing his face in a photo. "The real Brandon. And you're going to bring him back," Marla said with a fierce smile. "One memory at a time." A week passed. 7 quiet days filled with overthinking, false starts, and one unshakable idea. I couldn't just sit back and let Kayla erase me. Not from Brandon's life. Not from our shared history. So I did something bold. I bought him the phone. The one he'd wanted for months, a sleek, top-tier model he kept researching but wouldn't let himself splurge on. Brandon had always been practical, saving every bonus, never buying anything for himself. I remembered him sighing once, saying, "Maybe for my next promotion." He'd earned it long ago. He just needed someone to remind him he deserved nice things. I wrapped it in navy blue paper, his favorite color, and tucked a handwritten card under the ribbon. "Because you always put others first. Here's something just for you. Happy birthday, B." That night, I dropped it off at their apartment just outside Shroon Lake. Kayla wasn't home, thank God. Brandon looked surprised, touched, even as he unwrapped it. He murmured, holding the phone like it might vanish. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," I said, my voice light. "You deserve something that makes your life easier." He smiled, softly, almost like the brother I remembered. "Thanks, sis, this means a lot." For a moment, I let myself believe we were healing. That maybe the storm had passed. But I should have known Kayla wasn't going to let the clouds clear. I got my answer 2 days later. It was a Friday evening, the air thick with dinner smells and low music from their kitchen. I'd stopped by unannounced, something I used to do all the time. Brandon invited me to stay while he and Kayla prepped dinner. She was stirring something on the stove, humming to herself. The new phone sat on the counter, unlocked and glowing. Then it happened in slow motion. She reached for the phone, knocked over the water pitcher, a loud splash, and the phone was submerged in the sink. For half a second, she looked stunned. Then she laughed. "Oh no," she said lightly. "Oops, clumsy me." My stomach dropped. Brandon rushed over, lifting the dripping phone from the water. The screen was already spidered with static. I watched his face, waiting for some sign of anger, some flicker of suspicion. Instead, he just exhaled and set it down. "It's just a phone, he said with a half shrug. "Stop overreacting." I hadn't said a word yet, but apparently even thinking was too much. Kayla giggled again. "I swear I'm cursed with electronics." Something in me curled inwards. I smiled tightly, excused myself, and walked to the porch before I said something I couldn't take back. Behind the door, I heard Kayla say, "You know she only got that to make you feel guilty, right?" And Brandon didn't answer. That night, back in my apartment, I sat in the dark with the card I'd written him in my lap, the ribbon still clutched in my hand. My chest ached, not from the money or the ruined phone, but from the way he looked through me. Like I was a nuisance. A disruption. Kayla hadn't just broken the gift. She'd broken the moment. And she'd done it with a smile. But I wasn't going to break, not this time. It took me 3 full days to convince Brandon to meet me alone. Not at their apartment, not with Kayla, just the two of us. Like old times. He finally agreed to meet at a little cafe near Mirror Lake, neutral ground. I picked it carefully. Quiet, tucked between a used bookstore and a gift shop. A place with memories. We'd come here once as kids with our dad after a snowstorm, sipping cocoa with frozen noses and laughing about whose snow angel was the weirdest. I got there early, ordered 2 coffees, sat by the window with a view of the lake. My fingers drummed against the ceramic cup while my brain raced. What could I say that would reach him? How do you warn someone they're falling for a performance without sounding jealous or bitter? Brandon arrived 5 minutes late, looking tired. His coat was wrinkled. The bags under his eyes looked like they'd been packed for a long trip. "Hey," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. I smiled gently. "Hey." He thanked me for the coffee and added 2 sugars, same as always. That small, familiar motion made something squeeze in my chest. "I'm glad you came," I said. He nodded but didn't meet my eyes. "Kayla didn't want me to." There it was, the crack in the wall. "She said you'd try to stir up drama," he added quietly. I leaned forward, keeping my voice soft. "Bran, I'm not trying to take you away from her. I just want to talk to you, without the script, without the noise." He shifted uncomfortably but didn't push back. That was something. "I miss you," I said. "I miss who we were." Brandon looked out the window. "It's just been a lot, new job stuff, wedding stress. Kayla's trying to get used to the family dynamic." "She's not just trying to get used to it, Brandon. She's trying to control it." His head whipped around. I regretted the phrasing instantly, but I couldn't pull it back. "I heard her," I said carefully. "That day in the hallway, she said she'd have full control over you now, that she'd get everything in your name." He rubbed his forehead. "Emily, she doesn't like me, fine, but this goes beyond not liking your sister. She's isolating you." He shook his head, more exhausted than angry. "You don't understand. Then help me. Help me understand why she laughs when she breaks things that mean something to me. Why she mocks me in my own presence. Why she makes you believe I'm always out to cause trouble." His silence wasn't loud. It was hollow, like he wanted to speak but couldn't find the right defense. "You remember when we were kids?" I asked, pulling my phone from my coat pocket. I opened a photo. Brandon and me knee-deep in mud, trying to build a dam in the stream behind Grandma's house. We were 12 and 10, grinning, soaked, and unstoppable. He looked down at it. Something flickered across his face. "I do," he murmured. "You cried when the dam broke and I said I'd help you rebuild it." "Because you always did," I said. "You always helped me rebuild." This time he looked up, and the look in his eyes nearly undid me. But then, like a curtain falling, the distance returned. He pulled his hands back from the table. "Kayla is my wife now," he said, steel creeping into his voice. "You'll respect her or stay out of our lives." The words landed like a slap. He didn't shout. But he might as well have. He stood, left his coffee untouched, and walked out the door. I sat frozen for several minutes. People came and went. The lake shimmered. My coffee went cold. Then I slid the photo back into my pocket and stood slowly. My hands were trembling, but my spine had never been straighter. That was the last time I would beg. I had pleaded for truth. I had offered memory, history, and love, but if he needed evidence, I'd find it. The idea came to me sometime after midnight when I couldn't sleep and the old family scrapbook slipped off my shelf. It landed open on a photo of Brandon and me standing in front of a tiny, crumbling treehouse at the edge of Finger Lakes. Our summer fortress, he used to call it. We built it with leftover wood, spider-webbed with duct tape, and swore we'd live there forever. That house was long gone. But maybe I could build something else. A bridge, a safe place, a reminder. The next morning, I called a real estate agent. 3 weeks later, I held the keys to a quiet, sunlit lakeside home in the Finger Lakes region. 2 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and a dining area that opened onto a view of the water. I used every dollar I'd saved for my someday house, because someday was now. I sent out invitations, not fancy, just thoughtful. Handwritten cards addressed to our parents, Brandon, and yes, even Kayla. "Weekend retreat," I wrote. "Let's try again. Just family, no fights. New beginnings." Marla helped me decorate with wildflowers and twinkle lights. We cooked and cleaned, arranged board games on the coffee table like we were 10 years old again, and even found a bottle of wine our parents used to drink on special occasions. I wasn't naive. I knew Kayla would come. She couldn't resist an audience, but I also knew I had to try. For the version of Brandon who once ran barefoot through sprinklers with me and promised he'd never forget who we were. They arrived Friday afternoon. Kayla wore a beige trench and dark sunglasses like she was arriving at a film premiere. Brandon looked stiff, but less guarded than at the cafe. Our parents followed behind, tired and unsure but willing. I greeted them all with a smile. "Thank you for coming," I said. "Let's just enjoy the weekend." That first evening was cautious. A little wine, polite conversation, the occasional forced laugh. But when the sun dipped low, I stood and raised my glass. "To fresh starts," I said, holding Brandon's gaze. "Not the kind you run to, but the kind you fight for, because family's worth that." Everyone clinked glasses. Kayla took a small sip, leaned into Brandon, and whispered something. He didn't smile, but he didn't move away either. Later, while clearing plates, I caught her watching me from the patio. And then she said it, quiet enough that only I could hear. "Let's not pretend this isn't your desperate plea for attention." I blinked, stunned by the sheer smugness in her tone. I set the dishes down gently, refusing to let her bait me. But the quiet hum of something old and sharp stirred in my chest. She wasn't here to reconnect. She was here to win. And this wasn't just a dinner anymore. It was the beginning of a battle. The house was quiet that night, too quiet for a family gathering. I'd hoped the wine and lakeside air would relax everyone, smooth the edges between us. But Kayla's whisper at dinner still echoed in my ears like it had been shouted. "Let's not pretend this isn't your desperate plea for attention." I couldn't unhear it, not because it hurt, but because it was calculated, perfectly pitched to land beneath the radar just for me, the kind of cruelty that hides behind a smile. The others had gone to bed. My parents claimed the guest room. Brandon and Kayla took the larger bedroom near the front. I was on the couch with a book I wasn't reading and a fire that had long gone out. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how many more subtle jabs she'd get away with. Then I heard it. A laugh, high-pitched, sharp, coming from the hallway. I crept toward the sound, careful not to let the floorboards creak. Kayla's voice, clear as crystal, just outside the guest rooms. "She can sleep on the couch, it suits her," she said, voice dripping with faux innocent delight. I stopped in my tracks, heart thudding. Then came Brandon's voice. Quiet, hesitant. "Kayla, oh, we're just joking, aren't we, babe?" She cut in quickly, loud enough now to make it clear she wanted me to hear. That was the moment I stepped into the hallway. "I'm sorry," I said, louder than I meant. "That's not how guests treat their hosts." Kayla turned with a grin so sweet it could rot teeth. "Emily, we were just teasing. Right, Brandon?" He looked caught. Like a deer in headlights, unsure which car was coming first, I folded my arms. "This isn't teasing, it's disrespect. I opened my home to reconnect, not to be mocked." She blinked innocently. "Oh, come on, lighten up, we're family." Family. That word used to feel warm. Now it felt weaponized. Brandon cleared his throat. "Let's just go to bed, okay? It's been a long day." Kayla touched his arm lightly and gave me one last smirk before retreating into their room. I stood alone in the hallway, watching the door close. It felt symbolic. Back on the couch, I pulled the blanket over me and stared into the darkness, too exhausted to cry, too angry to sleep. But sleep didn't come anyway. Because around 2:00 a.m. I heard something again. Soft, muffled, a voice, Kayla's. I crept toward the hallway once more, staying just out of sight. Her door was cracked open. She was on the phone, and what I heard next made my blood run cold. "Once the house is in his name, I'm gone," she whispered, a pause, a breathless chuckle. "He's too blind to notice, then I'll cash out and disappear." My heart pounded so hard I was afraid she'd hear it. She kept talking, casually, like she was planning a weekend getaway. "I give it 6 more weeks tops. She's soft. He listens to her still. I need her out of the picture." Silence. "Then, yes, I'll push him to get her to sign. He'll think it's for taxes or whatever." I backed away slowly, hands shaking. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I curled up by the fireplace with a blanket wrapped around me like armor, my mind racing with every word, every detail, every possible consequence. She wasn't just cruel. She was calculated, manipulative, and Brandon was walking right into it, eyes wide shut. I stared at the flames until they blurred, and I whispered to the room, to no one in particular. She's going to destroy him, unless I stop her. Morning came, but I didn't feel it. I sat outside on the balcony with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, watching mist drift across the lake. The house behind me was still, Kayla's trap slumbering in silence, but I couldn't rest. Not after what I heard. She was planning to take everything, not just Brandon's heart, his money, his home, his future. And once she got it, she'd vanish. I'd seen people like her before, in the hospital when I worked admin during nursing school. Women with charms sharp as a scalpel and hearts cold as the ICU floor. But I'd never seen one this close. In my family, I should have recorded her. But I didn't. So now I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. Not for me, for Brandon. He needed to see what I saw, hear what I heard, before it was too late. She said she'd push him to get me to sign something. About the house. That gave me a window, a clue, a thread to pull, and I knew where to find more. Kayla wasn't careful, she was confident. The kind of woman who believed she was smarter than the room. That arrogance was her weakness. That afternoon, while everyone was out on a short hike, I feigned a headache, I acted. I knew the moment would come. And it did. Kayla came back early to prep dinner. I watched through the window as she giggled into her phone, texting with her back turned in the kitchen. She left the phone on the counter and stepped into the pantry. 1 minute. That's all I needed. I walked in casually, like I belonged there, because I did. She didn't. Her phone sat unlocked. I picked it up and scrolled quickly to her messages. There it was. A conversation with someone labeled S. My stomach tightened. The last message was from Kayla. Get her to sign something about the house. He won't question it. She's still trying to win him back. I took a screenshot. Then 3 more, previous messages, photos, and what looked like a document attachment. My fingers moved fast, heart pounding. I forwarded everything to myself. Then, just as casually, I slipped the phone back where I found it and turned toward the fridge. She came out moments later with garlic and thyme. Oh, hey, she said, startled. Didn't hear you come in. I smiled. You were in the zone. She watched me for a beat longer than necessary, then smiled back. Dinner's almost ready. I nodded. Smells great. I walked out with the scent of betrayal still clinging to my clothes. In my room, I locked the door, opened my email, and checked the screenshots. My hands were shaking, but my breath came easier. Finally, real evidence. A blueprint of her plan. She wanted my name off the deed, or better yet, her name on it. Maybe through Brandon, maybe through both of us, but one thing was clear. She didn't want me in his life. She needed me out. She knew I was his conscience, the part of him that remembered who he was before her. And now I had the first piece of a puzzle I intended to finish. That night at dinner, I watched her closely. She poured wine, laughed a little too loud, called Brandon babe every other sentence. She played the part of loving wife like it was opening night on Broadway, but I knew her lines now. I had her script. She caught me watching once and tilted her head. I just smiled. Let her think I was tired. Let her think I was giving up, because while she was planning to cash out, I was planning to call her bluff. The house was quiet again the next afternoon, the lake stretching out like a mirror, still and watching. But I wasn't resting. I was preparing. My heart hadn't stopped racing since I forwarded those screenshots to myself. Every time Kayla passed by me in the hallway, every glance she gave over her wine glass, I wondered if she knew, if she suspected. But she didn't ask, because she believed I was done fighting. Let her believe it. Let her keep underestimating me. After breakfast, Brandon took our dad into town to grab fresh ice for the coolers. Kayla stayed behind, lounging on the patio in an oversized straw hat, pretending to read. I offered to vacuum the guest rooms, hoping it would give me a chance to move around without suspicion. It worked. While Kayla napped under the sun, her sunglasses slipping down her nose, I slipped down the hallway toward the primary bedroom. Brandon's room. I had no intention of snooping through drawers or phones. I didn't need to. What I needed was time, and something that could listen when I wasn't there. A week ago, I bought a small voice recorder off Amazon. Discreet, long battery life, strong mic. I'd charged it fully and tucked it inside a pouch in my pocket. Now I slid it out and stepped quietly into the room, pretending to adjust the curtains. The bed was made, Brandon's hoodie thrown across the chair in the corner. Kayla's makeup bag rested on the nightstand like a claim marker. I knelt near the headboard, ran the vacuum softly over the carpet, and palmed the recorder underneath. Right under the bed, center position. With the vacuum running, no one would hear the click as I pressed record. It beeped once, then blinked red. Listening, ready, I stood, smoothed the bedspread, and finished the vacuuming with steady hands but a hammering pulse. As I backed out of the room, Kayla's silhouette passed the window. She was still outside. I'd done it. I forced a smile when I saw her on the porch. "All clean," I said cheerfully. She smiled back with tight politeness. "How domestic of you." I tilted my head. "Just keeping the place nice for everyone." She took a slow sip from her iced tea. "Your devotion to this house is touching." I looked at her carefully, unsure if she was hinting at something, but she just smiled. I turned away, heart pounding. That night I lay awake again, listening, waiting. Imagining the red blinking light in that room recording everything. Would they talk about the house? Would she push? Would Brandon finally say something that would show me he wasn't lost entirely? Or would it all be silence? I didn't know, but I'd placed the net. Now I had to wait for what it would catch. The next morning I made small talk at breakfast while my ears strained for every odd tone, every glance between them. Kayla was cheerful. Too cheerful. She packed a lunch for her and Brandon to go kayaking, said they needed couple time. I nodded, waved them off. And as soon as they left, I went straight to that bedroom. I shut the door, kneeled by the bed, slid the recorder out from beneath and checked the screen. It was still blinking, still recording. And the counter read just over 12 hours. My fingers trembled as I stopped the recording and rewound. Voices crackled softly in the stillness of the room. Kayla. Brandon. Clear as day. I slipped the recorder into my pocket and bolted the door behind me. Later, I'd listen. Later, I'd know. But for now, I had what I needed. The recorder sat in my lap like it weighed 100 pounds. I was alone in my bedroom, the door locked, the curtains drawn. My hands hovered over the device like it might explode, like the truth inside it was radioactive. Part of me didn't want to press play, because what if there was nothing? What if I'd imagined it all? If Kayla's cruelty was subtle enough to stay hidden, if Brandon never said a word? What if I had risked everything and found only silence? But the bigger part of me, the part that had watched her smile as she dropped his phone, whispered jokes meant to slice, knew better. So I pressed play. At first, the sound was faint, just the creak of the bed, footsteps on the hardwood, drawers opening and closing. Then came voices. Hers. Light, lilting, just loud enough. "I think she's trying to impress your parents," Kayla said, the bed frame creaking as she moved. "All this food, this perfect house, it's like she's running for office." Brandon's voice followed, slower, wearier than I expected. "She's just trying to reconnect." A pause, then Kayla laughed. "Reconnect, she's desperate. She's always been like this, needy. Can't stand not being the center of attention." Something in me twitched, but I didn't stop the playback. Kayla continued, her tone honey-sweet and poisonous. "I think we should speed things up." "Speed what up?" Brandon asked. "The house, the paperwork, the transition." My breath caught. "Babe," she said, coaxing, "you said yourself it's too much for her to keep up, and it's not fair for you to be on the hook for everything when she's barely making rent in Albany." There was a long silence on the recording. Then Brandon murmured, "It's not about the money." "But it should be," Kayla said smoothly. "You're starting your life. This lake house should be yours, ours. Not hers." Another pause, then a chilling add-on. "She'll thank you later, or at least get over it." I stopped the recording, my hands shaking. There it was, not a confession of fraud, not a scream or a threat, but something worse. Pressure, persuasion. A plan, all dressed in calm tones and shared bedsheets. I had enough, not for the police, yet, but enough to finally hold a mirror to Brandon's face and say, look what you're letting in." I emailed the audio to myself, backed it up to the cloud, and stored the recorder in my locked suitcase. Then I went to dinner. Kayla was already seated at the head of the table like she owned it, like she belonged. She wore a silk blouse and soft waves in her hair, domestic, warm, deceitful. Brandon sat beside her, sipping wine, his eyes shadowed with something I couldn't quite read. We made small talk, grilled vegetables, weekend weather, my mom's new hair color. But I couldn't focus. because I knew what had happened in that room the night before. And worse, I knew she believed I didn't. After dinner, I made my move. I waited until everyone dispersed, my parents to the patio, Kayla to the bathroom, and slipped into Brandon's room. The recorder was gone. My blood ran cold. I opened the suitcase. Still there. I checked the drawer where I'd briefly hidden the USB backup. Empty. My heart thundered as I stepped into the hall. Then I heard her voice behind me. Looking for something. I turned slowly. Kayla stood in the shadows near the doorframe, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I forced a small smile. Just checking the guest towels. She tilted her head. In our room. Her voice was honey sweet again, too sweet. Habit, I said. I used to live here alone, remember? A pause. She stepped closer, just enough for the air between us to tighten. You know, she said, it's exhausting playing hostess and referee. I didn't blink. Then stop playing. Her mouth twitched. Careful, Emily, you're starting to sound bitter. I met her gaze. And you're starting to sound scared. We stood like that for one more breath, hers tight, mine steady, until I turned and walked away. I didn't run. I didn't hide, because she didn't know what I had. Not yet, but she would. The next night, the house felt like a stage. Everyone was smiling, but the walls felt tighter. Every room, every hallway, every glance, thick with something unsaid. Kayla floated through the space like a hostess, offering wine, adjusting the playlist, tossing jokes like confetti. But underneath her charm, I could see it. She was watching me, waiting, and I knew why. She felt something shift, a breeze she couldn't control, a thread unraveling in her perfect little plan. I had the evidence, but I wasn't ready to use it, not until the moment was right, and tonight was too soon. I needed one last thing, my recorder. I couldn't risk it disappearing, not if she started snooping. So after dinner, while Kayla and Brandon were in the living room debating which movie to stream, I slipped down the hallway. I moved fast. No creaks, no hesitations, into Brandon's room. The suitcase was still under the bed. I knelt down, unlocked it quietly, pulled the recorder out from its hiding spot beneath my folded sweaters. Got it. Just as I stood to leave, I heard it. Footsteps. Soft. Then stopping. I froze. The doorknob turned. I had seconds. My eyes scanned the room, nowhere obvious to go, so I dove behind the curtain. Pressed myself flat against the wall, the recorder still clutched in my hand, pulse hammering in my throat. The door creaked open. Kayla's voice drifted in. Oh, thought I left my cardigan in here. Silence. My breath caught as I heard her heels cross the floor. She moved slowly, like she was waiting to hear something. Drawers opened. The closet door creaked. Then she paused. Right in front of the curtain. I could hear her breathing, then a whisper. You're very bad at hiding, Emily. My blood ran cold. I didn't move, didn't speak. I waited. She didn't push the curtain, didn't reach for me. Just stood there for one long, suffocating moment. Then turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. I didn't breathe for another 10 seconds. Then I slid out from behind the curtain and bolted the door. My knees were trembling. I stared at the recorder in my hand like it had almost got me killed, because that's what it felt like. This wasn't a family spat anymore. It was war. She knew I was onto her, and now she was hunting. I backed up the audio to 3 separate places that night. My cloud, my old laptop, and a password-protected drive Marla had set up for me. I texted Marla. We're almost there, be ready. She replied within seconds. I've got your back, whenever you say go. That gave me courage. Because tomorrow night would be the final act. The truth was ready. I was ready. But Kayla, she had no idea what was coming. I didn't sleep. I just rehearsed. Again and again, I pictured how it would go, what I'd say, what I'd show, the look on Brandon's face. The sound of Kayla's excuses unraveling in real time. By the time the sun rose, I was beyond nerves. I was ready. Dinner that night felt like the calm before a thunderstorm. My parents chatted politely, unaware of the storm building behind my smile. Brandon kept glancing at his phone, distracted. Kayla, of course, was glowing. I made lemon chicken, she beamed, placing the serving tray down like it was her coronation. She kept the tone light, but I could feel the undercurrent. Her eyes flicked to me now and then, sharp, assessing. She knew something was coming, she just didn't know when or how. We ate in relative quiet. I barely touched my food. Brandon poured another round of wine. My dad complimented the roast vegetables. My mom asked about lakefront taxes. Normal, too normal. Then, as Kayla stood to clear plates, I spoke. "Wait!" My voice was calm, steady. She paused mid-step, a dish still in her hand. Everyone looked at me. I stood. "I need to show you something," I said. "All of you." Brandon furrowed his brow. "Emily, what's going on?" I reached for my tablet on the counter. Opened the file folder I'd organized with painstaking care. I looked straight at Kayla and pressed play. Her voice filled the room. "Get her to sign something about the house. He won't question it. She's still trying to win him back." Then her laughter. Then more texts on the screen, screenshots I had swiped from her phone. Our parents went still. My mom gasped. My dad blinked like he wasn't sure what he was hearing. Brandon looked like someone had punched him. Kayla set the dish down slowly, her eyes narrowing. "This is a violation of my privacy," she said, her voice laced with indignation. "This is the truth," I said. I switched to the audio recording. Kayla again, sultry, persuasive. "The house should be yours, ours, not hers." Then Brandon's hesitant voice and Kayla's final push. "She'll thank you later, or at least get over it." I turned it off. Silence. Brandon stood slowly, his face pale. What is this?" he asked Kayla, his voice cracking. She laughed, too loud, too brittle. "You're really going to believe her? She's been trying to destroy us from the beginning." I looked at him. "Brandon, I didn't come here to destroy anything. I came to protect you. She was going to take the house. She was going to leave." Kayla's eyes widened. "That's not true." "It is," came a voice from the door. Everyone turned. Marla. She stepped in with a police officer behind her. "I submitted the evidence 2 days ago," Marla said. "Just in case." Kayla's mouth dropped open. "You're kidding, this is absurd." But the officer stepped forward, calm and firm. "Ma'am, we have reason to believe you engaged in attempted fraud involving property ownership. You'll need to come with us." Kayla turned to Brandon. "Bran, please, you don't believe this," but he was already stepping back, shaking his head. "You used me." His voice wasn't loud, but it was final. She lunged toward the tablet, but the officer grabbed her wrist. "Let go of me," she shrieked. She looked to me, her face twisted, not with rage, with fear. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. They let her out the door. The moment it clicked shut, the house exhaled. Brandon sat down slowly, burying his face in his hands. Our mother reached for him, but he shook his head. Then turned to me, his eyes red, his voice shaking. "I'm sorry." I nodded, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. "I know." He came over, and for the first time in months, my brother hugged me. The silence after Kayla left wasn't awkward. It was clean, like someone had opened all the windows and let out a storm. We sat in the dining room for a long time, none of us moving much. The wine glasses remained half full, the chicken cold on our plates. Brandon didn't speak for almost 10 minutes, and I didn't rush him. Eventually, he leaned back in his chair and looked around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. "For a while," he said quietly, "I thought I was losing my mind." Our mother touched his shoulder gently. "She made me feel like I couldn't trust anyone, especially you," he added, turning to me. I nodded, swallowing a lump in my throat. "She was good at that," I whispered. Brandon rubbed his face, then gave a shaky laugh. "And you just kept showing up, even when I pushed you away." "I almost stopped," I admitted. "So many times. But then I'd remember, when I was 12 and got stung by a bee, you carried me half a mile back to the car." He looked down, smiling faintly. "You said no one hurts your sister and walks away." He met my eyes again. "I should have remembered that." Our dad spoke up for the first time. "You both forgot you weren't alone." The words landed hard. Quiet, true. We didn't have the kind of family that yelled or made dramatic declarations. We had a quiet closeness, one that had been stretched thin by time and Kayla's manipulation. But in that moment, around a table once meant for celebration, we began the slow work of stitching it back together. Later that week, Brandon filed for divorce. There was no dramatic courtroom scene, no public unraveling, just quiet paperwork and a very expensive lawyer who looked both annoyed and impressed at how deeply Kayla had nearly embedded herself. The screenshots and audio were enough to start a case for attempted fraud. It wouldn't land her in prison, but it would ensure she never got a dime out of Brandon. He never asked for the tablet again. He didn't need to. He knew the truth now. And once he knew, he couldn't unsee it. A few days after the paperwork was filed, Brandon stopped by my place in Albany. He stood in my doorway, awkward and unsure, holding a small box. "I've brought something," he said. Inside was the original birthday card I'd given him, the one I thought had been lost with the phone. "I kept it," he murmured. "Even when I was angry, even when I didn't want to admit I missed you." I blinked back tears. "You have no idea what that means to me." He stepped in and hugged me, this time longer, real. He stayed for hours. We didn't talk much about Kayla. We didn't have to. The wound was still fresh, but the infection was gone. He told me he'd started seeing a therapist. Said he wanted to understand why he'd let someone get so deep inside his head. I told him I was proud of him. For the first time in months, I meant it. In the weeks that followed, the house at Finger Lakes felt different. Not haunted, not heavy, just quiet in the right ways. I opened the windows often, let the breeze sweep through. I repainted the guest room, cleared out every remnant of that week. I made it mine again. One day, while cleaning out the drawers in the foyer, I found an old photo tucked behind the mirror. Brandon and I muddy, grinning, standing in front of our treehouse with victory poses and twig swords. I smiled. I set it in a frame by the fireplace. Because no matter how dark things had gotten, we'd come back. We'd found each other again. And this time we weren't letting go. A year later, the house at Finger Lakes didn't just look different. It felt different. The walls no longer echoed with tension. The windows no longer framed silent battles. The air was lighter, like even the house had exhaled. I'd repainted the porch, replaced the kitchen tiles, hung string lights from the eaves that glowed soft amber each evening like the house was smiling. But the biggest change, the sound, laughter, chatter, music humming through the windows. This weekend, I'd invited everyone again. Only this time, no one had to pretend. Brandon arrived early, carrying folding chairs and coolers like we were kids setting up a beach fort. He smiled more now, less like someone trying to hide a bruise, and more like someone finally healing. And with him came Teresa, Brandon's new girlfriend. She wasn't flashy, no designer bags or glossy veneers. She wore soft linen pants and a messy bun and brought homemade bread she'd wrapped in a towel embroidered with tiny lighthouses. The first time I met her, I braced myself without realizing it. But then she said, "You're Emily. Brandon talks about you nonstop. Like, I feel like I already know your life story." And I instantly knew she wasn't here to conquer anyone. She was here to belong. Now she stood beside me on the patio, helping lay out cutlery and wiping down the table while humming a Fleetwood Mac song under her breath. "You do this every year?" she asked. I nodded. "I will now." She smiled and leaned in conspiratorially. "He said you're the reason he got out, that without you, he wouldn't have known what was happening until it was too late." My breath caught, but I nodded. "I didn't save him," I said. "I just reminded him who he was." She looked at me for a long moment. Then, without a word, pulled me into a hug. The real kind. Warm, no performance, no stakes, just gratitude. When we pulled apart, I could see she understood everything without me having to say anything. Later that afternoon, our parents arrived with a fresh pie and mismatched folding chairs. Dad wore his old fishing hat and Mom had packed 3 kinds of potato salad just in case. They smiled more too. We all sat on the porch, plates full, wine glasses tipping with every gust of wind. Brandon manned the grill like a man reborn, and Teresa took photos of everything, even the burned marshmallows. At one point, Dad raised a toast. "To second chances," he said. We clinked glasses. Even the lake seemed to sparkle in agreement. After dinner, while everyone drifted toward dessert and card games, I walked down to the edge of the dock with a glass of wine and let the breeze play with my hair. The lake stretched out before me like a mirror, and in it, I saw a version of myself I almost didn't recognize. Not the girl from a year ago who'd stood in that hallway, trembling from Kayla's latest insult. Not the woman who'd paced by the fire with a recorder hidden beneath a bed, praying for proof. This version of me was calm, solid, unbroken, and behind me I heard footsteps. Brandon. He sat beside me with a gentle thud, holding out a blanket for my shoulders like he used to when we camped in the backyard. For a while we didn't speak. Then he said, "I still think about it sometimes." I didn't have to ask what it meant. He turned to me. "If you hadn't said anything, if you hadn't stayed." I looked at him. "I was terrified, Brandon, that you'd never believe me, that I'd lose you forever." He nodded slowly. "I almost didn't believe you, and the worst part." I wanted not to believe you because it was easier. I swallowed hard. But you kept showing up, he continued. And I'll never forget that. We sat with that for a while, let it settle like the dusk around us. Then I asked, do you miss her? He took a deep breath. Sometimes I miss the version I thought she was, the dream I bought into, but the real her. He shook his head. No, I'm just grateful I saw it before she took everything. You're stronger now, I said quietly. He smiled. So are you. Eventually, Teresa called us back inside for s'mores and Uno, and the night slipped into soft laughter and flickering candlelight. But I stayed behind a minute longer, watching the water, holding the quiet like a gift. Because I knew now, healing doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't arrive with thunder or applause. Sometimes healing is a single evening without fear. Sometimes it's a sister and a brother on a dock, no lies between them. Sometimes it's just peace. Thank you for walking this entire journey with Emily. From betrayal to bravery, from heartbreak to healing. This story was about the quiet power of truth and the strength it takes to hold on to those we love. If you saw a piece of yourself in Emily's fight, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in the beauty of second chances, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because sometimes, peace isn't something we find. It's something we build, one moment, one truth, one light-filled home at a time.